Probably most families in the valley had somebody that worked for the Forestry Commission, because we were still at the height of the sort of expansion of the modern forestry plantations. And so I managed to get a job at 15 years of age with the Rothbury Beat, working out of Warby Hill at the bottom of the village, but also from an office in Thornton Woods. And again, went through this wonderful learning process of learning all the sort of practical skills that one had to do to manage forests. So, as I say, we were still in the expansion stage, trying to create new forests. So there was a lot of planting to be done, but before that, obviously, areas were fenced. And I learned how to fence. Other areas were enclosed by old stone walls, and so I learned how to do dry stone walling. And then, of course, planting, hand weeding trees. All of the summer was spent with what most people might call a sickle. We call a hook, grass hook, weeding all the trees and taking the grass away from them. And then as time went on, I then moved on to harvesting, and so I learned how to use a chainsaw and became one of the gang that were felling timber. I loved it, of course, at the time, enjoyed doing the practical work and working with all the other local guys. But of course, at the same time, as time moved on, I began to learn more about conservation, my passion, and how actually many of these things were probably the wrong thing or the wrong tree in the wrong place. And so all these thousands of Sitka spruce we were planting were probably the wrong thing to be doing. Probably, I think at the time I was planting about 1,500 Sitka spruce a day in places like Usery Ford, up at the top of the Corket there, all on new ground, beautiful open moorland that had been ploughed and taken in for forestry. I then spent the rest of my career trying to find a way to take those all away again. Over the last 10 years or so, Threeston Burn Forest has all been felled. It was sold to a private landowner, Duncan Davison, who's Lilburn Estates have basically felled all of that timber. They've mulched the whole of the hillside and they've turned it back to moorland. And so it's one of the sort of biggest, if you like, conservation projects in the northeast. It's cost many millions of pounds to do that. And it's taken that individual local landowner to do that. We became in the UK expert at converting very poor land into modern productive forestry. But of course that was, we now know, at the expense of things like peatland, habitats, the problems with water coming off with all these plough lines, taking the water very quickly off the hillside, which for many, many decades since has caused more flooding downstream here in the Corket Valley. So we see more of these sort of flash floods that can be quite harmful further down, and we get flooding in Rothbury now. All partly as a result of this work that was done back in the 50s, 60s and early 70s. And so now, you know, government policy changes, there's lots of work going on locally, take the exotic Sitka spruce off and maybe plant or allow regeneration of native woodland as well. It's really significant changes just in my lifetime in terms of what we think about as the right thing to do for forestry. Maybe if you're new into the area, you would look at it and think, isn't this wonderful? But it's a slightly depleted landscape than the one I grew up in, slightly depleted from a wildlife point of view.